Good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday. A little coffee. Sitting by some maple buckets, hoping it's gonna make a little sugar for me today. It did frost last night, so it's a good chance we'll get a little run. If I hear it dripping, I'll put it on the video for you. Today we're reading The Great Plan by Roald Dahl. This is the next chapter in our story, and I hope you have fun. Okay. The Great Plan. We've absolutely got to stop them, Sophie cried. Put me in your back pocket, quick, and we'll chase after them and warn everyone in England that they're coming. Redunculous and impossible, the BFG said. They is going 2 times as fast as me, and they is finishing their guzzle before we is halfway. But we can't just sit here doing nothing, Sophie cried. How many boys and girls are they going to eat tonight? Many, the BFG said. The flesh lump eating giant alone has the most squackling wopsy appetite. Will you snatch them out of their beds while they're sleeping? Like peas out of a poodle, said the BFG. There's a spider crawling on me. I can't bear to think of it, Sophie cried. Then don't, the BFG said. For years and years I is sitting here on this very rock every night, night after night, when they is galloping away, and I is feeling so sad for all the human beings they is going to gobble up, but I has had to get used to it. There is nothing I can do. If I wasn't a titchy little runty giant, only 24 feet high, then I would be stopping them, but that is absolutely out of the window. Do you always know where they're going? Sophie said. Always, the BFG said. Every night they is yelling at me as they go bootling past. The other day they was yelling, we is off to Mrs. Sippy and Miss Zori to guzzle them both. Disgusting, said Sophie. I hate them. She and the big friendly giant sat quietly side by side on the blue rock in the gathering dust. Sophie had never felt so hopeless in her life. After a while she stood up and cried out, I can't stand it. Just think of those poor girls and boys who are going to be eaten alive in a few hours' time. I think that's a robin. We just can't sit here and do nothing. We've got to go after those brutes. Or the cardinal? It's lovely. The BFG sighed and shook his head firmly. I has told you 5 or 6 times, he said, and the 3rd will be the last. I is never showing myself to human beings. Why ever not? If I do, they will be putting me in the zoo with all the jiggy raffs and caddy piddlers. Nonsense, Sophie said, and they will be sending you straight back to the orphanage, the BFG went on. Grown-up human beings is not famous for their kindness. They is all squiffle rotters and grink sludgers. That simply isn't true, Sophie cried angrily. Some of them are very kind indeed. Who? Said the BFG. Name one. The Queen of England, Sophie said. You can't call her a squiffle rotter or a grink sludger. Well, the BFG said. You can't call her a squeak pip or a not mucher either, said Sophie, getting angrier and angrier. The flesh lump eater is longing dearly to guzzle her up, said the BFG, smiling now. Who, the Queen? Sophie cried aghast. Yes, said the BFG. Flesh lump eater says he is never eating Queen, and he thinks perhaps she has an especially scrumdiddlyumptious flavor. How dare he, cried Sophie. But Flesh lump eater says there is too many soldiers around her palace, and he dursn't try it. He better not, said Sophie. He is also saying he would very much like to guzzle one of the soldiers in his pretty red suit, but he is worried about those big black furry hats that he is wearing. He thinks they might be sticking in his throat. I hope he chokes, said Sophie. Flesh lump eater is a very careful giant, the BFG said. Sophie was silent for a few minutes. Then suddenly, in a voice filled with excitement, she cried out, I've got it! By golly, I think I've got it. Got what? Asked the BFG. The answer, cried Sophie. We'll go to the Queen. It's a terrific idea. If I went and told the Queen about these disgusting man-eating giants, I'm sure she'd do something about it. The BFG looked down at her sadly and shook his head. She is never believing you, he said, never in a month of Mondays. I think she would, said Sophie. Never, the BFG said. It is sounding such a wonky tall story, and the Queen will be laughing at you and saying, what awful rubsquatch. She would not, Of course she would, said the BFG. I has told you before that human beings is simply not believing in giants. Then it's up to us to find a way of making her believe in them, said Sophie. And how is you getting in to see the Queen anyway, asked the BFG. Now hold on a sec, said Sophie. Just you hold on a sec, because I've got another idea. Your ideas is full of crodswoggle, said the BFG. Not this one, said Sophie. You say that if we tell the Queen, she will never believe us. I is certain she wouldn't, said the BFG. Well, we aren't going to tell her, said Sophie excitedly. We don't have to tell her. We will make her dream it. That is an even more froth-bungling suggestion, said the BFG. Dreams is lots of fun, but nobody is believing in dreams either. You was only believing in a dream while you was actually dreaming it. But as soon as you were waking up, you was saying, oh, thank goodness it was only a dream. Don't worry about that part of it, Sophie said. I can fix that. Never can you fix it, said the BFG. I can, I swear I can. But first of all, let me ask you a very important question. Here it is. Can you make a person dream absolutely anything in the world? Anything you like, said the BFG proudly. If I said I wanted to dream that I was in a flying bathtub with silver wings, could you make me dream it? I could, the BFG said. But how? Sophie said. You obviously don't have that exact dream in your collection. I do not, the BFG said, but I could soon be mixing it up. How could you mix it up? It is a little bit like mixing a cake, the BFG said. If you was putting the right amounts of all the different things into it, you was making the cake come out the way you want, sugary, spongy, curranty, Christmassy, or grobswitchy. It is the same with dreams. Go on, said Sophie. I has dillions and dillions of dreams on my shelves, right or left? Right, said Sophie. I has dreams of bathtubs, lots of them. I has dreams about silver wings. I has dreams about flying. So all I has to do is mix these dreams together in the proper way, and I is very quickly making a dream where you is flying in a bathtub with silver wings. I see what you mean, said Sophie, but I didn't know you could mix one dream with another. Dreams like being mixed, said the BFG. They is getting very lonesome all by themselves in those glassy bottles. Right, said Sophie. Now, do you have a dream about the Queen of England? Lots of them, said the BFG. And about giants? Of course, said the BFG. And about giants eating people? Squiggles of them, the BFG said. And about little girls like me? That is the most commonest of all, the BFG said. I has bottles and bottles of dreams about little girls. And you could mix them all up just as I want you to, Sophie asked, getting more and more excited. Of course, but how is this helping us? I think you is barking up the wrong dog. Hold on, said Sophie. Listen carefully. I want you to mix up a dream which you will blow into the Queen of England's bedroom while she is asleep. And this is how it will go. Now, hang on a minute, said the BFG. How was I possibly going to get near enough to the Queen of England's bedroom to blow in a dream? You is talking dumb silly. I'll tell you that later, Sophie said. For the moment, please listen carefully. Here is the dream I want you to mix. Are you paying close attention? Very close, said the BFG. I want the Queen to dream that 9 disgusting giants, each one about 50 feet tall, are galloping to England in the night. She must dream their names as well. What are their names again? Flesh lump eater, said the BFG. Man hugger, bone cruncher, child chewer, meat dripper, gizzard gulper, maid masher, blood bottler, and the butcher boy. Let her dream all those names, said Sophie, and let her dream that they will be creeping into England in the depths of the witching hour and snatching little girls and boys from their beds. Let her dream that they will be reaching into the windows and pulling the little boys and girls out of their beds. And then, Sophie paused. Do they eat them on the spot or do they carry them away first, she said. Oh, they is usually just popping them straight into their mouths like popcorn, said the BFG. Put that in the dream, Sophie said, and then the dream must say that when their tummies are full, they will go galloping back to giant country where no one can find them. Is that all, said the BFG? Or maybe he said it like this, is that all? Certainly not, Sophie said. You must then explain to the Queen in her dream that there is a big friendly giant who can tell her where those beasts are living so that she can send her soldiers and her armies to capture them once and for all. And now let her dream one last and very important thing. Let her dream that there is a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill who will tell her where the big friendly giant is hiding. Where is he hiding? Asked the BFG. We'll come to that later, said Sophie. So the queen dreams her dream, right? Right, said the BFG. And then she wakes up. And the first thing she thinks is, oh, what a horrid dream. I'm so glad it was only a dream. And then she looks up from her pillow, and what does she see? What does she see, said the BFG. She sees a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill right there in real life before her very eyes. How is you going to be sitting on the queen's windowsill, may I beg, said the BFG. You are going to put me there, said Sophie, and that's the lovely part about it. If someone dreams that there is a little girl sitting on her windowsill, and then she wakes up and sees that the little girl really is sitting there, that is a dream come true, is it not? I is beginning to see where you is driving at, said the BFG. If the queen is knowing that part of her dream is true, then perhaps she is believing that the rest is true as well. That's about it, Sophie said, but I shall have to convince her of that myself. You said you was wanting the dream to say there is a big friendly giant who is also going to talk to the queen? Absolutely, said Sophie. You must. You are the only one who can tell her where to find the other giants. How is I meeting the queen, said the BFG. I is not wanting to be shooted by her soldiers. The soldiers are only in the front of the palace, Sophie said. At the back there is a huge garden, and there is no soldiers at all there. There is a very high wall with spikes upon it around the garden to stop people climbing in, but you could simply walk over that. How is you knowing all this about the queen's palace, the BFG asked. Last year I was in a different orphanage, said Sophie. It was in London, and we used to go for walks all around there. Is you helping me find this palace, the BFG asked. I has never dared go hide and sneaking around London in my life. I'll show you the way, Sophie said confidently. I is frightened of London, said the BFG. Don't be, Sophie said. It's full of tiny dark streets, and there are very few people about in the witching hour. The BFG picked Sophie up between one palm and thumb and placed her gently on the palm of the other hand. Is the queen's palace very big? He asked. Huge, said Sophie. Just give you a quick, see if you can get that picture. I don't know. There it is. Kind of reflecting out here a little bit, sorry. Then how is we finding the right bedroom? Well, that's up to you, said Sophie. You're supposed to be the expert at that thing. And are you absolutely sure the queen will not put me in the zoo with the catty piddlers? Of course she won't, Sophie said. You'll be a hero, and you'll never have to eat snozcumbers again. You mean it? He said. You really mean it? No more disgustive snozcumbers? You couldn't get one if you wanted to, Sophie said. Humans don't grow them. That did it. The BFG got to his feet. When is you wanting me to mix this special dream? Now, said Sophie. At once. When is we going to see the queen, he asked. Tonight, said Sophie, as soon as you finish mixing the dream. Tonight? The BFG cried. Why such a flush-bunking flurry? If we can't save tonight's children, we can anyway save tomorrow's, Sophie said. What's more, I'm getting famished. I haven't had a thing to eat for 24 hours. Then we had better get cracklin', the BFG said, moving towards the back of his cave. Sophie kissed him on the top of his thumb. I knew you'd do it, she said. Come on, let's hurry. And we'll stop there. Enjoy.